Welcome back to another episode of Buckle Up, an ultra running conversation. How are you doing this morning, Mandy?
Doing great, Brian. Just drinking my coffee, enjoying the sunshine, thinking about when I'm going to run today.
Yeah, I got to get my runs in. So it is Wednesday, the 25th, late June. I got to get my runs in before the weekend because I'm going to be wrapped up in all sorts of Western States updates and drama and all the things Western States this weekend. How about yourself?
Same. We're all just about to see our productivity go down. This is one of those weekends where we just are glued to our screens watching updates, probably taking it along with us on our runs. Like that's got to be like a hazard running with your phone.
It's usually headphones for me.
Yeah.
I'll get rid of the visual and then I'll go back and watch something if I missed it. But I can run and listen. I can drive and listen. So yeah, it's just on all the time. So if you're an athlete of mine, I'm around this weekend and I'll be answering all the text messages as well.
Yeah. Yeah, same. Excited to get back into getting pumped up and being inspired by runners and
You got
trying
any
to make
favorites? You got any
connections.
favorites in the race this year?
I do have a personal favorite. So Adrian
Okay.
McDonald from Fort Collins. I don't know that he's like, how where he's ranked amongst the field, but he's running my Wild West relay next month. And so I mean just, I love to cheer on the locals and I love to cheer on people that live in northern Colorado. So I'm rooting for Adrian. I think he's a awesome kid. I had coffee with him a couple of weeks ago and just a cool guy and who just genuinely loves to run. So I'm excited to see his experience out there.
Yeah, he's definitely in the top 10. I don't see him on this particular list that I'm looking at, but I saw him on other lists for sure.
Yeah,
I
I
did
think
note that.
with dropouts now, I'm seeing him on this list that we're looking at. But we've got a lot of scratch offs too. A lot of people that were in it that are no longer toeing the line.
Yeah, it's obviously really competitive, probably the most competitive 100 in the States for sure on this weekend. And the men's field seems to be pretty stacked. The women's field is stacked as well, not to discredit any of them, but maybe there is more dark horse availability in the women's field. I feel like you got a couple great names in there, like Tara Dower. You got Fu Zhang, Esther from Hungary, Emily from Zimbabwe, Bradley should be really competitive as well. Heather Jackson is easily top 10, if not top 5. So
Yeah.
it's anybody's race on the women's field, I feel like. In the men's field, a little bit more stacked. It looks like Kilian's obviously in there. David Roach is in there. That should be a good battle for the ages. You got Adam Peterman's been up there in the past years. Rod's also in there. You got Dan Jones, and you got our Cocodona winner in there as well. So Dan Green. So it's going to be an interesting to play out. It's always fun. It's really fun as a spectator, and my name's not in there, so that makes it way easier just to enjoy the day and then see how it all shakes out, right?
Yes. Yeah. And Kilian, not Kilian Korth, who we interviewed today on our
A
podcast.
different Killian won
But two
most
Kilian.
recently the Tahoe 200 in record fashion, 52 hours and change. I think it's 52:40, which I explained in the show is roughly, if it were an even split, it would have been a 26:20 100 miler, which is a really fast time. He goes into depth and tells us that it was not an even split and that he kind of, with some breathing issues near the end, which have now been termed the Tahoe lung. So neither here nor there, but either way, still a smoking fast time. 52 hours is just incredible. So I ran the Uray 100 in 50 hours, so we could put that into perspective. Of course, different courses, different terrain, a lot more vertical in Uray, but 100 less miles. So
Yeah.
not
I think
apples
he
to apples,
said
but man, it is moving.
that
Yeah.
his first half was 21. Is that what he said? 21,
Oh,
22. We'll have to listen to
yeah.
it. And he slept for 5 minutes total this entire race. So not a lot of
Jeez.
sleep, but it sounds like he also stayed pretty calm and collected. We'll hear kind of his recap, things he changed in his training this year. For this race after having gone through some DNFs and some injury, a lot of breathing troubles the last couple of years in his running journey. So it was fun to hear him say that all in all, this kind of was a perfect race for him. And he mentions in there like preparation and training, but he also mentions like kind of just a little bit of luck. Like, are the breathing issues going to stop you, or are you going to be able to push through it? And which is kind of interesting because you have to wonder, like, at the beginning of the race, if he would have pushed a little harder, would the breathing issues have been worse? If he would have gone a little slower, would they not have been as bad? So there's such an interesting, like, calculated decision making there that some of those decisions they have to just You just have to go for it and see what happens.
Yeah, it was a great conversation with Kilian. I had never met him before. So, Mandy has a little connection to him through his older brother. And that was great to learn about. It was a great conversation. And I feel like it wasn't all Tahoe 200 either. So if you're here for that, unfortunately, spoiler alert, it's not all Tahoe 200. It's a little bit about life outside of running and what he likes to do and moving forward. And, we talked about live stream and the Triple Crown and just kind of general conversations around the sport of ultra running with a decent focus on the Tahoe 200 and his win there. So all around a great conversation, really fun and enjoyable.
Yeah, we learned about a little bit of his family life that maybe led into some of this and what he does outside of running. Spoiler alert, he doesn't just run 24/7. There are other like hobbies and things that he does. So we talk a little bit about that. So it's just always fun to be reminded that these superhuman athletes, are human, and they have cool things and struggles outside of what they've got going on the course.
You'll have to let me know how that book is that he wrote. And without further ado, let's get to the episode. It's Kilian Korth and our most recent Tahoe 200 race winner. 52 hours, 40 minutes. Incredible times. Thanks for listening. Thanks for tuning in.
Like, subscribe, share, and let us know if you have an idea for a great guest you would like to hear on our podcast.
Thanks again. Take care. Thanks so much for coming on the show this morning, Kilian Korth. You're coming off a really big win just recently at the Tahoe 200, and you've been in the space for quite a few years now. I went back and I was doing some homework on you, looking at your ultra sign up, and we always back up with our guests, and we're always talking about ultra running, but we always back up with our guests and talk about like the beginnings and like your trajectory to the Tahoe for yourself and where you came from in sport. How did you wind up at the Tahoe 200 and running ultra marathons?
Yeah, thank you both for having me. I really appreciate being here. Nice to chat with you both this morning, and thanks for doing it in the morning. It's nice to like have an interview when I feel like totally fresh and articulate rather than in the afternoon where I feel a little sluggish. So that's nice. Yeah, as far as my history with sport goes, I was a swimmer all the way through college. So was a Division I collegiate swimmer. And then when that ended, I wanted to continue to eat like a swimmer and not become an unhealthy person. And so I signed up for a marathon, and this was in 2018. And I had run a marathon in 2017 with my brother Conrad, and I didn't really train for it, and it went terribly. And I was like, I will never ever do this again. But signed up for a road marathon in West Virginia, which is a road marathon, or I'm sorry, in Virginia, but it has 7,500 feet of climbing. So it's like a big road marathon, which, when you're new to the sport, you're just like, oh, cool, I'm going to go run some hills. And so that actually went really well. And then later that same year, my brother convinced me to sign up for the Leadville 50. So July 2018, ran the Leadville 50. And by that point, the addiction had like well and truly already set in. And so before even finishing the Leadville 50, I signed up for my first 100 later that same October. And now that I'm a coach, I'm like, man, going from a marathon to running 100 in less than 6 months, not the way that I would advise for people to do it. But I kind of just jumped in head first, quickly with my progression in the sport. I realized that, I'm not super fast when compared to, elite runners, but that I am very good at just continuing to move forward consistently. And so I watched a few documentaries that kind of led me to want to do long trail FKTs, including Carl Meltzer's Appalachian Trail documentary. I've seen that a million times now. And so I was like, okay, what's the intermediate steps from 100 to like big FKTs? And like the obvious answer is 200s and other multi-day events. And so that has been my focus for about the past 4 years. And I tried my first 200 in 2022 and tore my hamstring at Cocodona. So that was rough. And then had a lot of other different trials, and mistakes and bad luck resulted in me not having, a good 200 for several years running. But then finally, kind of all the hard work came together. Enough learning had happened, and I had at least grokked some of the lessons that had been, ruthlessly taught to me by previous courses to actually execute a good 200 at Tahoe. So pretty satisfying.
Yeah, Conrad, I talked to him yesterday. So I'm good friends with Conrad. We share an office together. And so we were talking yesterday, and I said, what do I need to ask Kilian about? And he said, ask him about his first marathon. Make sure he tells the story of running a first really horrible marathon to now taking home first place at Tahoe. And I think that's such a relatable story for a lot of people because we've all had those races where you do it and you're like, I wasn't built for this. I'm just going to give up and never go back to sport. So it's amazing to see all of the things that you've gone through in those times of doubt for you, different hurdles you've had to overcome just to still keep showing up for it.
Yeah, the first marathon really resulted in just a zombie march from 18 to the finish. So it was brutal. I mean, what you don't know, you don't know. I probably didn't eat anything. I was probably dehydrated. I hadn't trained enough. You know, I was a collegiate swimmer, so I was like 22, so I'm, both a cocky young man and unprepared for what I'm doing. So a combination of factors resulted in me, laying on the pavement afterwards, being like, this is the stupidest thing anyone could ever do. But, the ones I think too, once I just started running on trail and kind of being in those types of beautiful places and having those experiences, started with a lot of backpacking after college too in the Appalachians. And I mean, you just fall in love with the mountains and the outdoors, so like even just adjacent to the running, that has a lot to do with it.
Yeah, your trajectory is pretty steep in general. I mean, it's neither here nor there, but I'm looking at the ultra sign up like I'd mentioned already, and it looks like maybe you're doing the Triple Crown this year. Is that correct? And you did something at Cocodona, but you didn't do the full Cocodona. You did Flagstaff Crest, maybe.
Yeah, I did. I did that with my dad, who's it was his first ever organized race. He's 63, so he started running a few years ago. He's also running the Leadville 50 this year, which Conrad and I are both doing with him. So yeah, now we have a family of ultra runners.
Conrad shares a story, like when we talk about your family getting into this, I'm assuming you were part of it, like biking. You guys went on long distance bike rides as a family. Do you feel like that like sparked your interest in going those like FKT and just exploring long distances?
Yeah, I don't think that necessarily at the time my parents were like, hey, we are creating endurance athletes. But when I was, the summer I turned 8, so we started when I was 7, we bicycled from Fort Collins to Seattle and like had all of our gear with us, we're camping. I think it took 46 days. There was a moment in Montana where it's blazing hot and we like, at that point you're using paper maps there. I'm 7, but they're using paper maps to navigate. So we're on like the other side of this river and a bridge is broken. And so we can't get to our planned campsite. And so we either had to bike, in 100-degree weather with no water to this town, and my parents were like, okay, we can stay in a hotel, or we could go back to a different campsite that was a little closer. And they let me, as the 7-year-old, make the decision of whether to go forwards or go backwards. And I mean, I think predictably I chose to go forwards, but yeah, I mean, I definitely draw a straight line between like those experiences and, the proclivity towards endurance sports. And my parents when I started ultra running were like, this seems so crazy. Like, how'd you get into this? And I'm like, well, like, what are you talking about? Like we were out for 46 days cycling, So yeah, I do see a very pure connection there, just in terms of like what I was kind of environmentally going to be interested in doing.
I mean, bike touring is like getting more popular now. It has come of age, I guess, and now we got gravel revolution happening. Gosh, I don't know how old you are, but 20 years ago it wasn't as popular. I mean, just that's the obvious, right? But were you riding on a tandem? Were you riding your own bicycle?
Tandem. So I was on the back of a tandem, and my dad was.
It doesn't make it any better.
Charge.
Yeah, it doesn't make it any better. And actually, for those listeners, I read a book called The Science of Bicycling, and a tandem is actually less efficient than a single person bicycle. You're fighting each other basically, and you're like 160% efficient as opposed to 200% efficient at your maximum individual bicycles. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that I think my dad would probably support me in saying that I was pulling my weight for the most part as a 7-year-old. But there was a day that like I got like a chicken bone stuck in my throat, and so I wasn't able to eat for like an entire day, and so my dad then had to like drag me over this mountain pass. So I think there was a couple days, not necessarily my fault, but where I was just dead weight. So I'm sure that was not pleasant for him.
Luckily, you were 7, right? So you're probably all of 60 pounds or anything, or something. I mean, yeah, not that that's light, but it's lighter than an actual adult.
Totally.
So do you still enjoy cycling now, Kilian?
Man, I have a mountain bike that's nice, and I have used it when I'm injured. But I will say that now that the running is the entire focus of my life essentially, that whenever I'm on a bike, I just kind of wish I was running. It gives me like 60 to 80% of what a run gives me. And so I do not dislike it. I will say that I don't have any desire to road bike. I think when we did that trip, we were on mostly not crowded roads. And so we weren't worrying too much about cars. But in the small amount of road biking I did when I lived on the Front Range around Denver, I had, I maybe biked for about a month, but I had several negative interactions with vehicles. So I am not enthusiastic about sports where I'm not controlling my risk assessment, like you're relying on a bunch of people who are probably on their phones to not run you over. So I'm not super enthusiastic about road biking, but I enjoy mountain biking. And if in the future, I could definitely see myself kind of getting into the gravel biking scene, where even mountain biking, there's a little bit of risk that I'm not quite good enough to, handle all the things I'd want to be on single track all the time. But with gravel biking, I could imagine that being really nice, just being out on like really mellow Jeep roads and just enjoying some solitude. So I could see that being something I get into in the future. But, running it's the focus, and it's like the thing that gives me the workout effect that I want. Like in terms of anxiety relief, biking is like, okay, we got 70% of it gone, but running is like everything. I run, the rest of the day is going to be peaceful. And that's a formula that I can just repeat time and time again.
I think most people would say quite the opposite, although I see it from your point of view as well. I do enjoy running more than cycling. I have been a triathlete in the past. I have the gravel bike, the mountain bike, and the road bike all hung upside down in the garage right now. Actually, the road bike is actually on the floor in the garage because I rode it just most recently. But I live in Western Colorado. I think you live at the state line, if I'm not mistaken, in Grand Junction. You have like a mecca of mountain biking trails and gravel roads out there that just go for miles, like all the way into Utah and back. And gosh, that'd be a great alternative for you if and when you need it. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, it is a good off-season activity. And when I have been injured and I have my mountain, like I've thought about selling my mountain bike in the past, but then I get hurt and I'm like, if I have no outlet, like I will go crazy and my wife will kill me. So, I'm going to hold on to a bike for sure for those moments where it's like, if I can't run, I need something.
And what about swimming? Is swimming still part of your life as a recreational activity or cross training or anything at all? Just to kind of cover all the sports.
Yeah, it is not. I don't know many collegiate swimmers. I know some, but I don't know many who retain an enthusiasm for swimming post college life. I mean, I will say very confidently that my hardest week of training for swimming in college is much harder than my hardest week of training for ultras. I mean, the amount of time you can swim and the, other activities around it. And I mean, there's the college lifestyle thing too, where like you're drinking and you're not sleeping right and not eating right. And so there's like a bunch of factors that probably go into it. But no, the short answer is I am still so burnt out from swimming that the thought of trying to get in a pool and like training for a triathlon, which I could probably do pretty well at, is just so unappealing sounding. And I know many collegiate swimmers who feel the same way. It's like, I don't want to go smell like chlorine and stare at the bottom of a pool. Like I have swam in some. There was a period where after I tore my hamstring, where I didn't have a bike and I was swimming. I was living in the mountains, so I would go swim in some alpine lakes, and I actually did enjoy that. And it was like really good cardio, and there was something pleasant about that. But in a pool, like no desire.
Yeah, you don't live in Colorado to follow the stripe on the bottom of the pool, right?
100%.
No. Well, Kilian, talking about a burnout, you log quite a bit of miles for all of these ultras in your training. I guess talk a little bit about what that training looks like and how you've altered your training the last couple of years as you've experienced, injury and breathing issues. Like, what does that look like? And have you experienced burnout through any of that and overcome that?
Yeah, so I actually haven't had any kind of burnout from running. And maybe there's like a somewhat delusional sense of self-belief that has just like carried me through all of these trials, in the sense that like I didn't really have evidence for the fact that I could lay down a time like I did at Tahoe, but I just continually believed that I could. So there's something to that, just like kind of mindless pushing forward that really helped me through a lot of the trials. But in terms of like specifics of training, everything is constantly an experiment with ultra running. And that's one of the things I love about both being a runner and a coach, is like if you want to run a sub 3 hour marathon, we pretty much just have this like formula that you can follow. And if you hit these times in your training, you will get this result, like it's pretty reliable. Whereas with ultra running, I mean, you can find successful people who are running 80-mile weeks and winning 200s. You can find successful people who are running 150-mile weeks and winning hundreds, so it's like all over the map in terms of volume, intensity, this type of thing. And so the evolution I've kind of taken is, when I first started out, I was not the most mindful with my diet, and I got more, and like going into Leadville when I ran that in 2019, like I felt like I had it relatively nailed down, but I was still dealing with some chronic inflammation issues. And so that led me to explore what at the time would have been termed low carb, I basically started out keto. And so I did a few months with like no carbs, got myself into the fat metabolizing system basically. And since then that has evolved into, there's like new terminology all the time, but optimized fat metabolism, OFM, which is it's like lower carb than, someone like David Roche or something like that. But I feel like with diet, I'm at the point now where I've got like enough fat burning that now I've like been starting to add in more fuel. So one big change I made with training this year was I used to do all my runs below 3 hours fasted. And now I do any run that is going to be over 2 hours. I feel as if I am on race day. And so I'm taking in between 60 and 70 grams of carbs an hour, even if it's a pretty easy run. And I think that has made a difference both with just the gut training and just like general recovery. So I still do some fasted runs, but they're just shorter and they're always going to be easy. So that's one big update I've made in training. Another thing that I think made a big difference going into this year was having Cocodona and Tahoe in 2024. Those two DNFs back to back. It was really brutal mentally. I would never want to go through that experience again. But it did lead me to jump back into some shorter races. And so I did the Mogollon Monster 100 miler, which, 100 miler is obviously not short, but it is way shorter than a 200. And so I focused a lot on speed work. And then I also had 100K after that, which I'd never done 100K before. It's the worst distance of all time, but it's focused on speed work again. And I'll explain why I say that in a minute. But those shorter races really got me to focus on being just a little bit more explosive and getting like my actual cardiovascular system working just, I think, more efficiently. And so I entered this year with like my easy runs, my easiest runs, my recovery runs being about a minute per mile faster than last year at the same heart rate. And so having that neutral pace be so much faster is a huge benefit for the 200s because you're basically running at a 1 or a 2 intensity the whole time. And if that 1 or 2 intensity can be 30 seconds faster than it previously was because of speed work, you're saving an hour and a half just based on that. So it's like, if you can just make yourself more efficient, speed work doesn't always equate to people as being totally applicable to these really long ultras, but I think that really helped me going into it. And then the reason I say 100K is the worst distance is because it is at such an uncomfortable intensity and it's long enough that you like a 50K, you can kind of be like, oh, this is going to be done really soon. But 100K, it's like you're at a 5 or a 6 for 10 hours. And that was absolutely brutal. I think it was a really good experience for me, but I think it brought a lot to my 200s this year. But man, I have no desire to go back and do 100K.
Kilian, where do you fit in the weekly mileage parameters in that scheme that you drew up of 150 to 80 miles or 50 miles a week? Just kind of where have you been, and did you change that as well?
So I haven't changed that too much, really. I fall somewhere in the middle of that. Like, when I'm training in the desert, I'm probably close to 120 miles a week, and I pay most attention to miles. But then when I shift to training in the mountains, like my last training cycle for Tahoe was almost all in Ouray. And if you know anything about Ouray, Colorado, it's just like constantly steep and rugged. And so those miles are obviously going to be a lot slower. And so I kind of shift to focusing on time on feet. I was still getting about 100 miles a week, but I noticed diminishing returns whenever I start to approach 24 hours a week on feet. And so I don't really go past that moment. I'm strength training I do 3 strength training sessions a week. I walk my dog 3 miles a day. And so I kind of count all of that as like the background base building training. Strength training is obviously more specific. And then there's, all the mobility stuff. So it's like, if you really account for the entire training load, and I feel like the training load has to both apply mentally and to your body, like sometimes it's hard for me sitting at night while I'm watching TV to be like, okay, I need to do this 15 minutes of mobility. And that is like a piece of the training load. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And so once I start to reach like 30 to 32 hours of actual activity and about 24 hours on feet, I think like that's enough. At that point, you're like almost at full-time job hour capacity. It's probably pretty close to the amount of time a professional athlete is spending on training. And so that's where I start to notice diminishing returns. And I don't think that's the same for everybody. It certainly hasn't been the same for athletes I've worked with. And I know there's people like, I don't know if you know who Pete Kostelnick is, but he has the record for running across the US and things like that. And that guy can do 10 200-mile weeks in a row, And so there's certain people who are going to be like volume responders like that, but most people are going to fall somewhere in the middle. And I'm definitely kind of, I would say on the upper end of volume for sure, if you're taking, ultra runners as a whole, but if you're taking, the top segment of people who are trying to be competitive, I'm definitely somewhere in the middle of the volume.
I coach as well, and Mandy's coached in the past. I don't think she's actively coaching currently, but I appreciate your approach in looking at it from the perspective of a duration and a time, right? Mm-hmm. And as triathletes back in the day, I raced Ironman triathlon for about a decade, 2000 and 2010. And because it's three multi-sport activities, we can't really measure distance equally. So we measure it by time and duration of all the workouts for the week and all that kind of stuff. And I like the way you're applying that to ultra running. It really makes a lot more sense because miles is miles, but you're right. There's so many extra stuff we're doing. We're doing the gym workout. We're doing the mobility. We're doing some yoga classes or some Pilates or something like that, right? We're adding all this extra stuff. You're walking the dog 3 miles a day. It's got to be 45 minutes. That's a 15-minute mile for walking, which is fairly aggressive already, right?
Yeah, for sure. And so like I always tell people, it's like you have to take this holistic approach to training where, for me, running is like 60% of my life in terms of like how I'm allotting my like energy resources. But for most people, it's not going to be that much. And so you just have to like take all the life stressors in and add those up into the kind of life load that's affecting you day to day. And so like getting too myopically focused on miles, I think can be to the detriment. Mm-hmm. That being said, like if someone is training for a completely flat race or like a backyard ultra, then I think, miles are probably the best metric. But when you start adding in trails, I mean, vertical gain is going to be your most like, it's the most relevant factor to how you're, judging those hours and on feet and time on feet spent. But we've all run in places where vertical gain is like not telling the story of the run. It could be sandy, it could be super technical, it could be really hot. So yeah, there's like all these factors to consider with ultra running, which is what makes the sport so fun because it's just this big puzzle that we're all attempting to figure out for ourselves. And that's, one of the things I love about it is that it's just consistently interesting for those reasons.
Kilian, I'm going to sidetrack just a little bit. You touched on that's how you spend 60% of your time, I guess. I'd love to hear a little bit more about like who you are outside of an ultra running enthusiast and what else do you do? Do you play pickleball? What are your other hobbies? What's family life? What's work life look like? Just give our viewers a little sense. Cause I think there's always this mystery behind people that we're watching on the live streams. Like what else do they do outside of this? Are they eating, sleeping, drinking, running 24/7 or do they have like a little bit of a life outside of it?
Sure. I am probably one of the people who has the least amount of life outside of running, to be honest. I work with, sorry, my dog's barking in the background.
That's all right. We love dogs.
Mine's chewing on a bone back here, being very loud.
I work for a coffee company locally, so I deliver coffee beans, and so I'm like a milkman, but for coffee. And so, go and do that a couple times a week just as kind of a side gig. I am working toward being a full-time coach, so I think that will probably happen by the end of this race season, if I had to guess, based on the current trajectory. So that will be really exciting. And then, outside of running in terms of hobbies, my wife and I love watching movies and TV together. That's kind of like our consumption of art, and we have kind of like in-depth conversations about those things. I read, I write. I have a Substack where I write about running. I have written novels, and I'm kind of in the process of attempting to get one published. It's a very discouraging process. So I haven't actually sent out a literary query for a while, but so I have, some amount of activities beyond running. But I think one of the problems with having so much of the energy resources allotted towards running is that when I can't run, it really has resulted in me kind of feeling lost. So, you could say, there is probably some outside running development that could help my overall mental health picture a little bit. But, it's an obsession. It's hard to get out of it sometimes. But yeah, reading and writing are probably my two biggest, otherwise time spent outside of running.
Just a quick follow up on that. What are you writing about? Like, what's the genre? Is it sports related or running related, or is it outside of everything?
It's running related in the sense that I really love the southwestern United States, and so I came up with a story that could be set in it's basically set in a kind of semi-post-apocalyptic climate crisis future. Like the town is where I'm currently located in Grand Junction, essentially. But then the main character has to go to the Needles, which is a district of Canyonlands National Park, which is my favorite desert location in the entire world. And so the story is, I wouldn't say contrived in necessarily a bad way, but it is contrived to place people there so that I could write about how that land, So it does involve running in the sense that running involves love for nature and where I live in that regard, at least.
I want to
That
read
sounds
that.
cool. Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
Sounds cool.
I love that. I love that futuristic post-apocalyptic stuff. It's awesome.
I would be happy to send you a copy. Yeah, it has gone through some amount of editing, probably not enough, but yeah, it's the process of attempting to get published is pretty brutal.
Yeah, I was going to say we interviewed Matt Scaletti yesterday. He's my MC. His wife just got published. She's a poet, and she was sharing that experience with me a little bit. And it's a lot. There's a lot that goes into that. It's like anything, right? Like anything that we do in life, people look at it and they're like, oh, that looks pretty easy. But there's so much behind it and so much preparation. And of course, with Ultra and your accomplishments there, the back end that people don't see and the sacrifices that have to be made.
Yeah, totally. I mean, it's the life as an ultra running metaphor can probably get overplayed, but it does consistently have salience.
I was going to ask you if you've, it didn't look like it on your ultra sign up, but have you crewed or paced or even ran the Moab 240? Because that Needles area is right in that kind of that same space.
Yeah, I have paced the whole race, the whole back section of the race that you can pace. I've paced all of it. So I paced 102 miles with a friend the other year. So that was a really long section to do.
That must be a good friend.
Yeah, very good friend. And it was rewarding, but that is a long section to pace for sure. And I kind of joked about it being like, how people say like, oh, I ran a 5K off the couch. I was like, this is my 100-miler off the couch because I hadn't run more than a 12-mile run for like 2 months, and I was like, all right, here we go. But yeah, so I've paced that whole section. I'm excited to do that race this year. I do think that's like my weakest race topographically, just from a running strength standpoint. So that'll be interesting. But yeah, that whole area is awesome. Basically Moab west to Capitol Reef is just like a magical square of the Southwest that, it's certainly not a secret. That's where a lot of people go there, but it's well traveled for a reason.
When Candace created that race in 2017, I quickly jumped on as a pacer because I was behind the power curve just to get in, and then I volunteered in 19, and then I've raced it the last 3 times, not the last 3 times, but 2020,
nice.
2022, and 2024. Unfortunately, 24 had a DNF, but I love the area. I volunteer the last couple of years in a row. This year I'll be there crewing some of my own athletes as well. So I hope to see you out there. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And congrats on the previous finishes. It's a long ways. I really like when you get to the LaSalle's and you can basically see the whole race course and you're like, damn, that is a really big loop.
Yeah. It is a magical place. What am I thinking of? Edward Abbey's book. I actually read it when I was training out there. The Desert Solitude, I want to say it's called. I read that book literally out there in the middle of no man's land with no service, just because I knew I needed something to do on my off time from training and scouting, of course, in previous iterations of it. Yeah, it's just a magical place to be. And I live about 3 hours from Moab, so I've always been drawn to it in spring and fall. And I actually kind of enjoy going out there in the middle of summer too, when no one's out there because it's too hot for the rest of everyone else.
Totally. Yeah. I haven't been out there too much in the summer just because I get so sucked into the mountains and it's easy to forget about the desert for a time. But I feel like between November and February, I am in Moab or Utah somewhere every week pretty much. And that's one of the beauties of being on the western slope of Colorado is you have access to all the Utah national parks that are, it's not that bad of a drive. And they are just, the big 5 are magical places. They get their reputation, because, or deservedly so,
Yeah, I've never been to that race. I need to go. So if either one of you ever want to pace or crew, I'd love to get out there.
Yeah, definitely.
I've run in Moab. Those were my first ultras in Moab, and it was in 2020 or 2021, Mad
Mm-hmm.
Moose was
Mad Moose, I
continuing
was
to
going
go
to
on
say, yeah.
races, and I just gave up on road running ever happening again, and signed up for my first 50K, and ended up running a 50 miler instead. And then I just was hooked. And so I ran my first few ultras in Moab, and then I felt like I just got burnt out, like the rocks and the desert, and I haven't been back. So you guys have sparked my interest to go back and see the desert again.
Yeah, you should go back and not do a race and go to the
Mm.
Needles
Yeah.
because that is, races can't go through there, but that is the best, like one of the best places in the world. I have never taken someone there and had them be underwhelmed. It is truly like I cannot express enough enthusiasm for the Needles.
I do. You're absolutely right. I do enjoy the races there, but I actually have my best experiences just by self-creating some sort of weird route that is
Yeah.
off grid and off the map, and maybe it might connect together. It might not. One of those deals, right?
Totally. Yeah, there's so much there, and you can get all the way out if you think about the whole area is all the way out to Capitol Reef, then you're including like so much amazing stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It is actually one area I know that we just talked about it a little bit, but it is one area I do bring my bike with me because I do feel like I could cover a lot of ground on a bicycle and see a lot more, get more bang for my buck if I'm not in a specific training mode. If I'm just kind of out for the sights in the space itself, I will bring the bike and go get some extra miles on the bike.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, talk about endless Jeep roads in cool places.
Let's get back to let's start diving into Tahoe 200, which you just successfully won in. Gosh, I think it's an insane time, 52 hours and 40 minutes. So let's break that down. 100 miles. That's 26 hours and 20 minutes. That's per 100 miles. If it was an even split, I don't know if it was a negative split or not, but either way,
definitely not.
Yeah, but a 26-hour 100 is a pretty impressive time already, and then you just basically doubled it, or essentially. I mean, I'm doing quick math, and obviously the race never goes that way. So let's dive into the Tahoe 200 and talk a little bit about your race experience there.
Yeah, for sure. So Tahoe is a kind of unique race in that it's mountainous, but it's all very gradual climbing. There is exactly one climb that's steep, but everything is traditionally runnable. The trails are almost all really nice. There's only a few technical sections, and so it's a race where my goal going in was to finish in 48 hours. I think that's totally possible, but only if you can avoid the breathing issues that are called Tahoe lung and that are pretty much ubiquitous this time of year. Like I think I was talking to the medical people afterwards. I think 90% of runners were suffering from some level of severity. So if you can avoid that,
could we talk about that Tahoe lung for a second?
For sure.
Let's explain it a little bit, I guess is where I'm going with it. Like, is it a pollen buildup in the lungs or something? What is going on there? It's not the dust and dirt like at the Bigfoot 200, right? It's not that. It's not like playa lung, like Burning Man or something, right?
So it is really dusty. So it is.
Oh, okay.
But it's a combination of dust and pollen, I think. And I mean, I've talked to Candace and I've talked to other people around the race, and they've asked hospitals in the area, like, is there a way to avoid this? And unfortunately, just at the time of the year the race is run, it's like peak pollen season. So you park your car and 20 minutes later, it's covered in yellow dust. There's times at night where you're running with your headlamp and all you can see is just like just particles flying through the air that you are just sucking in, So I think it's a combination of the dust and the pollen. I do think when the race used to be in September, when the Triple Crown was compressed into like 7 weeks and people didn't have the breathing issues, they were certainly not as common or let alone being like almost 100% of the field. And so I do think that the pollen is like the cherry on top. I think the dust probably causes some amount of issues. But when I was like coughing up gunk towards the end of the race, it was almost all the exact color of the pollen. It was like coming out in this like weird, gross honeycomb firm structure that was like the color of all the pollen you're seeing. And so I think that is the primary factor. And I don't know how to avoid it. I tried wearing a buff when people were passing me. I tried putting on a buff when I'd be in areas that were obviously dusty, and this just didn't seem to do anything and made me miserable at the time. So I think, the guy who came second, he said he didn't really suffer from it too much, but I think you just have to be lucky, really. And so I noticed it starting to get pretty bad coming into mile 100. The next 50K, I was still able to move pretty well. But then for the last 70 miles, my friend Joe and I have been calling it the oxygen governor. And it was just like, it was in place, there was an exact limit to how fast you could go uphill. It became a limit to how fast you could go on flats once it got worse, and then it became a limit to how fast you could go on downs.
Your respiratory rate was the governor or the the full extent of what you were able to produce.
Exactly. And so like my legs for a lot of it felt fine, but I couldn't suck in enough air to actually like feed them, you know? It was it's a very frustrating feeling when that's going on. And so, I mean, I said my goal was sub 48, but then Conrad paced me for the last 70. And once we started up the big climb and this is a turnaround on the second out and back, I knew. I was like, okay, so sub 48 is not happening. Like, let's focus on the course record because, you know, all you can do at that point is like, this variable is completely outside of my control. I have no solutions here. So I can just I have to accept the situation I'm in and just go forwards as best as possible. And so for a long time, I could still effectively run the downhills. And so that's what I was doing, you know, hike up at whatever the limiter is, and then just try to run the downhills as effectively as possible. And so, yeah, it was frustrating, but, you know, still managed to finish in a really solid time. And I mean, you were talking about the 100 splits. It was definitely not even. I think I could have had it much closer without the breathing issues, but I went out in 21:15, which was actually my 100-mile PR. So that was kind of cool. But so 21:15 and then, you know, whatever that adds up to, like 31 or something. So it's a big difference. But I mean, I think 21, for a while when I wasn't having the breathing problems really seriously, I was thinking 21:25 was a possibility, because if I could have actually pushed like I had wanted to, there would have been a big difference. And then, I mean, for the last 100 miles, basically, I was stopping every single hour to use my inhaler several times and take some deep breaths, and then use my inhaler a few more times. So I was spending, and I mean, air quotes, wasting. I don't think it was wasted time, because it was ultimately, I think, making me move faster and helping, but I was spending 3 to 5 minutes every hour doing that. And so, I mean, there's 2 hours right there that I spent stopped. So yeah, there's improvements that could be made if you can avoid that. But like, in terms of the variables that I could control, I pretty much look back on it as a perfect race. Like, I don't think I could have done very much to improve the outcome there.
Yeah, and even if second place didn't have the same experience with the lungs at the time that you spoke with them, because I know some of my athletes are still like almost progressively getting worse with the breathing issues. I'm trying to get them out moving and walking just to kind of break up some of that stiffness from the race itself. I have finishers there as well this year, and they're saying that they're having trouble still breathing after the fact. And so it's like a revolving door. But where I was going with it is there's 3 of you that finished in 2025 that have the top 10 times in Tahoe 200 records. But when you look at the other 7, they're from before 2020, from pre-COVID times. And so what do you think that attributes to? Are we just getting faster as a community? Are we just pushing harder as a group, as we're learning more about training structure and fueling and all those things? You think there's something to that, or you think it was just a decent year, low snowpack, and unfortunately these lung issues?
So I think that like, if you look at the course, the fastest times on ultra sign up for Tahoe, they were all from previous years where the course was a loop, and I think it was run in September. And so you have a slightly different course. I'm not saying it was easier. I have no clue. I think the statistics were very similar, but a slightly different course and a slightly different time of year, where I don't think Tahoe lung had been coined yet. So the breathing problems weren't quite as big of a deal. And so that could help to explain why some of those times are still faster. But I do think, having 3 of the top 10 times from this year, the podium, third place was, I think, 3 hours faster than last year. And so some of that just has to do with how the field shakes out for who has entered this race, But I mean, I think a lot of it has to do with 200s used to be races where people spent 20 minutes at aid stations, and you would hike the ups and then jog everything else. And 200s are not that anymore. 200s are run like hundreds, except you don't race till you have 100 to go, So like, and that's how I was approaching this race. That's how I approached Cocodona the year that I almost won. And that's how, like, I think you have to approach 200s now to be competitive. Is like, this is no longer a leisurely stroll wherein the person who continues to move regardless of the pace is going to be the winner. And I'm not taking anything away from the people who were doing 200s back in the day, who are pioneers of the sport. Like, and I mean, someone like Michael McKnight has some insane course records. Like, his Bigfoot course record is 51 hours. And I think that's like one of the best performances in a 200 in North America that I can think of on that course. So taking nothing away from those people who are pioneers, but the races used to be not as competitive and used to be run differently. And now that is just not the way it is. The 200-mile distance is becoming more and more popular with the Cocodona live stream. I mean, how many people are on the wait list for that race now? Almost probably 1,000. So like, 200's the whole 200 is the new 100 destination trail phrase has now become true. Like these are not just kind of this, it's no longer a niche community totally separate from the rest of ultra running like it kind of used to be. Like 200s are a competitive race that we are figuring out how to continually do better in. And so I think that contributes to the improvement year to year, as well as just, people improving with training and all of that.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. So it's not to say that 10, 15, 20 years ago, they could have been raced this way, just that they just weren't, like people were leisurely strolling them. I don't know, maybe just because they wanted to. And like the race was as fast as the winner was. And now that we've got people showing up and racing and being faster, then you're pulling everyone up with you who also want to race and compete. So I think it's a fun trend to watch, but it's also fun too to see that it's still so accessible to people who want to go out for the leisurely stroll and not kill themselves and, like feel completely drained of everything at the end of it. It's really interesting. So I was wondering, out on the course, like, were there moments at this race where you were like bottom of the barrel, everything was empty, doubting your ability, or did you feel pretty confident throughout this entire race?
I felt pretty confident throughout. Honestly, I didn't really go through a serious mental low the whole time, which is the first time that has ever happened for a 200. So that was cool. I had one point where that was lowest in the rest of the race, and that was coming into Village Green. So it's 37 miles to go on my way back. And I just got caught in the like, oh my God, 37 miles is such a long ways. I knew I had essentially like 12 miles of straight uphill to do because it's an out and back course. So I knew what I had come down. And when you come down that, you're like, Jesus, I have to go back up this in, 70 miles. I knew it was ahead of me. My breathing was really sucking. I felt tired. It was kind of cold. I tried to make myself vomit because I know that had helped people kind of clear some of the respiratory stuff in previous years, and that failed. So I just had no solutions to any of the misery. And so that was my lowest point in the race, but I still wouldn't call it like a traditional ultra running low. It wasn't like I was sitting there questioning all of my life decisions, which I have gotten to that point in the past, And so, yeah, I mean, I felt confident the whole time. When starting that section, I had like a 14-mile lead. And so I was like, okay. And I knew that if I hiked 3 miles an hour, which I could do at least because plenty of it was downhill, that I would get the course record. So I still had all these positive things to focus on. And I was like, okay, I'm going to win my first 200-mile race and I'm going to set the course record. And it's going to take forever to finish these 2 sections. But all you can do is just move forwards. And so, I wouldn't say it was easy by any means, but it just wasn't like okay, I need to drag myself out of the pits of despair like I have gotten to in the past. You know what I mean?
What was it like? Like if there was a fly on the wall or a fly on your shoe, what would we hear out during that section? So you're with Conrad at this point. He's pacing you. Are you guys talking? Are you laughing? Is it just quiet and focus?
I mean, honestly, for the most part, I couldn't talk to my pacers at all because I was so focused on breathing. I felt kind of bad about that because most of the time, I do want to talk to people and that just makes time go by faster. But no, I mean, it was quiet and you would just hear a bunch of raspy, It was just constant wheezing and coughing up of garbage. And so that's ultimately what life was like for, the last 37 miles. It was tough, but Conrad, is the supreme pacer. I think he was struggling for the first 40 miles of his section. I never knew that. He suffered in silence like a champion. And he was just enthusiastic the whole time. He only had to prod me to run one time, which I think is not too bad for 70 miles. Yeah. So, we were keeping up a decent pace and just moving a decent pace considering the situation and, moving as fast as we could. And so as in my head, I'm like, am I doing the best that I can? And the answer was almost always yes. There's a few moments where okay, I wasted 5 minutes at Village Green trying to take a nap, which was stupid. There's the one time he had to prod me to run downhill. So, there's a couple moments where the weakness started to creep in, but not that much. And so, yeah, very little conversation. For the last section, I just put on a playlist that was just, I had made beforehand and was just blaring some metal music and some angry guitars to give us the motivation to keep going. But yeah, unfortunately, it was just no conversation because I couldn't even get out words, unless we were gone a downhill and I could squeak out a couple and then return to breathing. It was just nothing is happening. It's all I was focused on was getting as much oxygen as possible.
Yeah. Wow, that's awesome. Yeah, Conrad has the first time he paced on a course. He wasn't pacing me. I think he was pacing Sean. No, he was pacing my husband. He was pacing Nick. And I was I was just getting to know his personality and I was like so angry at his personality for a split second. And then fast forward to today, I think he's one of the best pacers and the best people to have on your team, honestly, in life now. Like he's a great guy. And so I'm sure having him out there, like, he's not going to let you take the easy way out ever. And if he knows you can push more, I'm sure you knew that going into it. Like he'd be the one to push you and, like you said, prod you down the hill and make you run.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, that's funny that you're like, oh, he kind of struck me the wrong way at first. I think that's a common experience with him. He is
he knows that. He's
yeah. I mean, he is I would call him abrasive, but that like doesn't quite do it because he's not like once you get to know him, he's actually not abrasive, but it's like his love language is just like being incredibly direct with you.
No.
So yeah, there's like no there's no subtext at all, you know. It's like if this is what he means, this is what he's going to say. And I mean, that's one of the things I appreciate most about him. And yeah, as a pacer, like there's no one better. I like, shout out to him. He is the most supportive brother of all time. Like he's coming to pace all my races this year. I could not be more grateful. And yeah, it's like having him on the team and sitting in the back pocket, knowing that I'm going to run with him. And he almost always does to the finish. It's like I've got like a little extra afterburner. It's pretty great.
Yeah, he's excited to talk about it all the time. So he's always talking about how many weeks until I get to go pace, and this is what I'm running. And yeah, go ahead, Brian.
Is he an older brother or a younger brother?
Or he's 6 years older.
Okay, and do you have any other siblings?
Yeah, I have another brother who's 6 years older than Conrad, so we're all spread out for sure. But I think I owe a lot to growing up with an older brother like Conrad because my whole life I lost at everything that we did together. And in my head as a kid, I'm like, oh, we're wrestling and I'm weaker. It's not because he's 6 years older. It's just because I need to get better. So I think that, part of that competition really molded me into, the determined person I am today. So I look back on growing up with him as an older brother with extreme gratitude too, even if at the time, there was conflict every now and then.
I could totally relate to that. I have an older brother. I only have an older brother, and he's 5 years older than me. And he was a football player and played more robust sports than running, which I did. So we always had to play like tackle football in our yard, and I'd always just get crushed every time.
Totally.
I was the distance runner even back then. So just got destroyed all the time. Tackle football in the yard. So totally relatable. I get it.
Now your accolades are pushing Conrad, and he's looking at your results and with you, and he's like, man, I got to be better. So it's fun to see him grow as a runner too, looking at what you're doing, and you're inspiring him now. So it's a cool family dynamic.
It's great. And our like competitive relationship now is just fun. When he ran Leadville last year, I wanted nothing but for him to beat my Leadville time, and he did that. And so now he's got the Korth family Leadville record, which that's good. I'm like nothing but happy for him.
That was his goal. I wasn't going to bring it up if I wasn't sure he heard out with you, but we heard it all the time. Like, what's the goal? Got to beat my brother.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, he did it, and he could have gone much faster if he hadn't had a hip problem in the last 5 miles. So yeah, I was like nothing but proud of him for that. And I mean, it is cool just like it's sort of funny thinking about how the sport like skews what distances mean, because he's like a very accomplished distance runner, and then he's got his little brother's doing 200 miles, and it's like the sport's all over the place. It's like when you're in training and you're like, yeah, I'm running a marathon a week. You talk to someone normal and they're like, what are you? Can you explain this to me? What are you talking about? It's cool to kind of see the whole spectrum there.
Kilian, we're roughly 2 weeks out. I want to say maybe 3 weeks out from the race itself. It sounds like you've recovered from the lung issues. What does the recovery and rest look like now? And are you back? You must be back training a little bit because you do have some more racing this summer. What does that all look like now since your first place finish at the Tahoe 200?
Yeah, so the first week after Tahoe was crazy. Like I had brain fog and was just so sleepy. I mean, something we didn't talk about, but I only slept 5 minutes for the whole race. So yeah, like the sleep that you incur is totally insane. I mean, I was like taking 2 to 3 hour naps every day and then sleeping 9 hours and still waking up tired. Like it was nuts. But so this week I have, had a few good nights of sleep and actually feel like a normal person again. Drinking a bubbly water during a podcast, not the most effective apparently. But I've woken up feeling, more normal this week, which has been nice. I have like a little bit of a lingering tightness in my right hamstring, and so I'm getting needled on Friday, and so I'm hoping that will alleviate that for good. But I ran the past 2 days, and I've started lifting again, just like 5 and 7 miles on flats. And today's a day off. I had a small strength training session this morning. So today's a day off from running, and then I'll run the next 2 days. But the name of the game, I think, for me, approaching the rest of the year is just caution. Like, I had a moment of panic last week where I was like, oh my God, Bigfoot is 7 weeks away. Bigfoot is basically tomorrow. That is so soon. And I mean, if I can get in 3 weeks of training for Bigfoot, I would really like that. That's the goal. But if I can't, I have a huge base. And, so I'm thinking of, I think the rest of the year, I just have to accept, like, I'm going to lose fitness and strength. I don't think you can regain everything from 200 to the next in that short a period of time. So, like, if I was just doing Tahoe and Moab, I wouldn't say that. But with Bigfoot in the middle, it's like 7 weeks is just not long enough to like recoup everything that you take from your body when you're going all in on a 200 like that. And so I'm just thinking of like making smart decisions. I don't want to get injured. Keeping the goal as the Triple Crown in mind. Like, I want to win all 3 races, of course, but I want to finish the Triple Crown more than I want to win all 3. So, it's like there's a hierarchy of goals and a hierarchy of like my priorities here. And so I'm injury prevention, smart decision making. That is like how I'm approaching the rest of the year, and kind of just maintaining the fitness that I have as best as possible, while if my body allows it, also making some training gains. But the training gains are totally secondary to just like relying on the base that I have, approaching the next race, and being as fresh as possible for it.
Hypothetically, you got a 3-week block coming up before Bigfoot. What changes will you make from your training leading up into Tahoe that will be more specific to the course for Bigfoot?
Honestly, probably very little. I was training in Uray, which is way steeper than Tahoe, and so Bigfoot's is typically steeper than Tahoe as well. So I'll just train in the mountains and have fun. And the only change I'll make is that I'll get up higher because there's not as much snow now in July or June and July as there was when I was training for the Tahoe in May. So I'm just going to go have fun. That's been a real theme of my year, and was a big focus for me going into this race, was just having more fun. Because I think in years prior, I had just put way too much pressure on myself and kind of eliminated the part of the sport that I actually love, and that's the being in the outdoors. So, I've only got a few more 14ers to do. There's some big loops in the San Juans that I'm eyeing up that are pretty close to me. There's a few loops in the Sangre de Cristos that I want to go do. So it's like, I want to get out and enjoy the mountains in the time that I've got to do it. Because, if you ask me that question after Bigfoot, the focus is going to have to change for Moab, because Moab is such a flat race. And so I'm going to end up sacrificing part of my mountain season to go and train on Jeep roads in Moab, which, is fine. That's what I have the goal, so I'm willing to do that. But so for July, basically, it's just get out into the mountains as much as possible. I've actually got a fast packing trip planned with Conrad. We're going to go do the Wind River High Route. So that'll be cool. Yeah, time on feet, enjoy the mountains. Hopefully there won't be wildfires that really
that's Wyoming,
ruin the
right?
day.
If I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, that is Wyoming.
Yeah, that's right. Wind River.
So
hopefully all this rain we've been getting keeps the fires away.
I know. I'm worried about fires though, just because like the San Juans specifically are so dry. They were dry in May. They're dry right now. It's going to be. I've got my fingers crossed, but I'm not optimistic for fire season. But yeah, no, have fun. That's the goal for the next 3 weeks, and like training goals can kind of come along with that. I'll definitely, assuming everything recovery goes to plan, I'm going to throw in some speed workouts every now and then just to try to get my fitness to stay where it is, and maybe even improve a little upon the toll that Tahoe took. But enjoy the summer. We are blessed to live in a beautiful state.
Yeah, it sounds like a great plan, and I love the idea of keeping it fun. I think sometimes we can lose that focus. I know for sure I have in my longevity in the sport. Sometimes it's you're like, oh yeah, that's what I'm here for. It's supposed to be fun. A side note, I know there's 58 14ers. How many have you done?
I've done 54, so
you're right there.
Pretty close.
Yeah.
I'm still debating with myself whether I'm going to go do Culebra at all, because I just chafe at the idea of paying $150 to climb a mountain. Like if it was $50, I would probably do it. But I'm just like, I could do so many things with like $150 can buy me a plane ticket to someplace, like this is crazy. So I don't know if that one will happen, But yeah, I've just got a couple more left, and I mean, one of them is like all the ones that are easy to get to. I've done, so I've got to go do like San Luis, which is in the middle of nowhere, and you have to drive like 4 hours down a Jeep road. So eventually it'll happen. But yeah, I mean, I'll be excited to finish those out. And I mean, the benefit of living here is just the state has so much to offer. Like, I think you could live and not travel outside of Colorado and probably not get everything in a lifetime, you know? So it's cool to just have all of this at your fingertips.
What to continue in that thread, what is, of course, everything's experiential, right? The day, the weather, all those things. But what is one or two of your favorite 14ers that you've done?
I think the one that, like, if someone was like, hey, what's a good one to do for my first 14er? And I with no other qualifications there, I'd say go do Handies, which is in the San Juans, kind of close to Lake City. It's in between Lake City and Silverton. I think Handies it's relatively easy. There's no 14er that's easy really, but it's just a hike. There's no scrambling involved, but it's the view from Handies is crazy. It's so beautiful. I mean, you can see Uncompahgre, and you can see like 20 other 14ers in the San Juans, and the San Juans are my favorite part of Colorado. You know, it has everything, but my favorite 14ers are Maroon Bells. I love the Maroon Bells Traverse. I think that area, like the 4-pass loop around Maroon Bells, is not overrated. It is one of the coolest 28 miles you could do anywhere.
Come on, stop telling people that's my backyard. Come on. You're killing me. I've done it in both directions. I've done it overnight. I've done it in 10 hours.
Yeah.
I've done it 6-7 times at least, if not.
I mean, I don't think there's any protecting that secret anymore. The last few times I've done it from the Snowmass side, so I've added like 12 miles to it or something, just because I don't want to have to deal with the permits, and just made it a really, really big day. But yeah, I mean, I love the Maroon Bells Traverse. I think is actually oversold as far as how difficult it is. It's really not that bad. There's some moments of exposure, and you know, you want to have your wits about you, but it is so cool and so fun, and those peaks are so unique. Yeah, those are probably my two favorites, just from like I really enjoyed that day perspective. Also, it is my steepest on trail mile ever, getting up to South Maroon. Like it is a 2,000 foot mile on trail that's like doesn't involve scrambling. It is just that steep. And that is so crazy.
That's really steep. Yeah. I've never been out there. So now that we've had this conversation, I'm going to go out there and make it even busier, Brian. You're welcome.
You definitely should.
Well, you got to get a permit, and you got to find parking, and you got to get in before the ranger shows up for your parking permit, and yada yada. There's a bunch of things now. There's a few loopholes still, but generally it's a lot harder than it was just a few years ago to get it done. And I think that was a COVID change that they haven't changed back yet.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
But you could just park at the Snowmass Trailhead and make it a 41-mile day rather than a 28-mile day, if you feel like being out there forever.
Yeah, and that is an option for sure. It does add, obviously, quite a few more extra miles each direction. Yeah. So, but yeah. And to add to Handies, Handies is also on the Hard Rock 100 course. So it just anyone listening that's not familiar with what we're talking about 14,000-foot mountains in Colorado. There's 58 of them. Kilian's just about to knock out the last 4 remaining, maybe, if he's willing to pay the $150.
Maybe someone's going to send him a
I was going to say you should do like a GoFundMe for your final 14er.
Man, yeah, it's crazy. I mean, I just don't like, if I owned a mountain, I would just be like the people who own the Calibron, you know, where I'd be like, okay, as long as I'm not liable, go do whatever you want. But $150 is pretty crazy.
I think you do have to have parameters on it. Go do whatever you want. Sounds like dirt biking and those big side-by-sides. Like, you know, hey, no fishing poles, no hunting. But if you're up there with running shoes and a backpack and a running vest, I'm going to look the other way. You can go have your fun, you know?
100%. That is what I meant by go do whatever you want, was the qualifications you just made there.
Not through a rager.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah.
I just quickly just looked at the start list for Bigfoot and was looking at who else was running it. And I didn't realize Goggins was running it this year.
Yeah, David Goggins and Avery Collins are kind of the names that hop off the page there.
Yeah,
so yeah, I'll be excited to compete against him. I mean,
do you know Avery? He's a San Juan guy, and you tend to hang out there. I don't know if you ran into each other before or know of each other.
I have never run into Avery, so I'll be excited to meet him and compete against him. I mean, he's obviously going to be really stout. Goggins, who knows? I mean, whatever your opinion of Goggins, you have to give the guy credit for his finish at Moab. Like 62 hours is a very solid time for Moab. So, I mean, if he shows up in that kind of shape, I'm sure he will be a stout competitor as well. But yeah, I mean, there's no reason to be intimidated by anybody. If it's my strongest race topographically, it's the steepest climbs. That's what I'm good at.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to be approaching that race with a lot of confidence. I really want to win. I think winning all 3 races would be so cool. No one has done the Triple Crown and won all 3 races for quite some time. So that would be fun. Yeah, we'll see what happens. I'm just excited that there'll be, some competition. I mean, that's what we're here for, is to test ourselves against the best.
What does that look like for you? Do you, I mean, I know you kind of generally said like the census currently is that everyone runs the first 100 and then you start racing the second 100. But do you keep an eye on those guys, or do you just stick into your race plan and kind of maybe not hope it unfolds properly, but hope it unfolds properly?
Yeah. So for the first 100 of Tahoe, I was going in thinking I just want to have fun. Like the first 100, I know what the trails look like. Everything's beautiful. It's all really nice. I'm going to enjoy myself. I set like little intermediate goals where coming into Village Green on the way out, which is mile 100, you have that like a huge descent, and the last 4 miles of it are all on a Jeep road. So I wanted to be running 930s or faster on that Jeep road. And I was like, and I managed to do that. So setting little intermediate goals like that can be a way to just kind of have these steps in a race where like, oh, hey, I achieved this. Cool. And it can just make you feel a little better about where you are. But for the most part, like I'm just confident enough in my fitness and like speed in relation to other 200-mile runners that I think I can just go be super relaxed and have fun for 100 miles. And then I'm going to start thinking about racing. And so, I mean, if someone ends up being 10 miles ahead of me when I get to 100 miles at Bigfoot, but I'm at the pace that I'm happy with, like, cool, who knows? Maybe they'll blow up. Maybe I'll be able to catch them. Maybe they won't. Maybe they're having a race where they're, just crushing it, and there's nothing I can do about that. But I think it's a really dangerous thing to get sucked into racing too early in these things, because you can just, I think that part of it is the physical load, and then the other part is like I think you just need to be relaxed. Like that was another big focus for me going into Tahoe, and it just plays into the idea of having fun, but being relaxed. Like if you're running tight, with like balled fists and clenched teeth, like you're running a little bit stressed, like that is wasted energy. And trying to run relaxed and not waste any energy, I think is more important than like, oh, where am I in relation to the rest of the pack? Because when you get to 100 miles, you're only halfway and you probably have 25 to 30 hours to go, So you just have to like accept those realities of a really long race like this, and then know that a lot of things can change in the back half.
Well, we're excited to watch you, excited to cheer you on and hear updates, and loved learning more about you today. Love your take on it, running your own race. You seem calm, collected, competitive, but I don't know, not cocky. So I think you offer a lot to the sport, and we appreciate your demeanor, and yeah, humble guy for sure, doing some incredible things. So thanks for sharing all your stories with us. And
yeah, thank you. I appreciate all that. I mean, I don't think you're going to be successful in this sport being cocky. So, you'll just get taught too many lessons. And if you're willing to learn those lessons, you're going to be like, okay, I'm not the one in control here. It's really the mountains.
Yeah, I love the way your approach is to race inside of yourself. I think that's a huge key. And yeah, 10 miles seems like a lot if you're behind 10 miles at 100 miles in. But we know, and we've seen it in the past, in the short duration of 200 miles or the history of 200 milers, that anything can happen. I mean, gosh, if you implode a little bit, you can lose that 10 miles in just an hour and a half. I mean, it
totally,
really, it really could turn around so fast. And so just racing inside of yourself is the best bet. Well, Kilian, we appreciate your time. Thank you so much. We look forward to your success in the future, and we'll be following along for sure, watching those dots on the 200-mile maps for sure.
Well, thanks. I appreciate it. I definitely appreciate you both having me on. And I am doing Cocodona next year, so if you're following along with Cocodona, you'll get more than a dot. I think the live stream there has kind of changed the game and for the sport in a lot of ways. Yeah, it's an exciting future. I think the 200-mile distance will only continue to grow with the new races cropping up and stuff too.
So Cocodona 2026, if you see Mandy at the starting line and she takes off like a bat out of hell, just don't even chase her down. Just let her go and let her have her day.
Throw a rock at me and be like, girl, you don't know what you're doing. You should stay way, way, way back there.
So you're doing Cocodona too next year?
I'm on the wait list. I made the rookie mistake of not paying attention to registering right when it opened, even though I know like the internet broke anyways. I think I hopped on like an hour after, and Brian was even texting me. Did you register? Like, no.
And I was like, did you register? And she's like, oh, do I need to do that right now? And I was like, right now, like right now.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I didn't get in right away either. I had to, be like, hey, you guys want me in the race?
Hey.
Yeah, I know Steve. I've met Steve before at a conference, and so I have his cell phone, and so I've texted him about like helping at their races, and some like he's helped me with
Yeah.
a little mentorship stuff. So we have that like professional relationship. But I text Steve and I was like, I'm on the wait list. Can you bump me up a little bit? And I think I got crickets because he's like, we have that relationship where like you're a co-race director, but you're not Kilian Korth. No. You stay at number 100 on the wait list and you got to earn your way up there. So fingers crossed that I'm out there and I'm watching you from way behind crush the lead of the pack. That's the goal.
Well, I hope you get in there because that is a really cool race. I truly think Aravaipa has like pioneered something here, and if we want the sport to grow, like this is Jamil has the future vision goggles on, where he was like, okay, I know what we have to do. I mean, did you guys hear that 800,000 people watched the live stream throughout it? Like that's crazy. I mean, the live stream, it's funny to me that it's so popular with like non-runners because nothing is happening most of the time.
It's so boring. It's worse than NASCAR. It's worse
amazing.
than NASCAR.
You're just like, okay, let's watch this shell of a human being try to eat mashed potatoes out of an aid station.
I think for non-runners, it's intriguing. So I've shared it with like a lot of my friends in my network don't run, but they find it to be intriguing, especially after I've like run Leadville a couple times and my friends have come out to see like the carnage and the wildness that it is. So now when I share links to other live streams, they'll hop on and watch it just because they're like, this is really intriguing. And to like watch people treated like a car at a pit stop and like quickly in and out, or someone goes to sleep and then it's like, how long are they going to sleep for? It's like the Truman Show. We watched the Truman Show last week, and it's like that where you're just sitting there and you're like, how long is he going to sleep for?
It's just ridiculous. I think in this year's live stream, they were recording bathroom breaks, like how long people were in the porta potties, right? And I was like in it. I was like, I don't know. Like, how long is he going to be in the porta potty? And I'm like, what am I doing with my life? Like, how did I wind up here?
It's crazy. It's something like phenomenal to have on in the background while you're doing something else. Like, okay, oh yeah, there's Harry. Man, he's going out so fast. It's crazy. Can he hold on? Like, yeah, it's totally bizarre. I'm so enthusiastic about it though. I love it. I hope that more races start taking the lead. I got into Cocodona.
I finished in 2024, and I got into it from the live stream or just watching the live stream. And I was in the middle of the race in 2024, probably late in the race. And I was like, man, I'm not feeling like I did in other years at this event. I mean, of course I hadn't participated before, but I was like, oh, I know what it is. I'm so used to watching the live stream, and I'm not watching the live stream. I'm just one of the participants in it now. So after the race, I came home and I took 4 days to watch rewatch the live stream from the event that I was in, because I still wanted that effect of being like part of the live stream, even though I knew it was old news, right? I knew who won, but
yeah, I want the experience. One of my buddies has a really good idea for the live stream where, the Mammoth 200 that's starting this year has a $5,000 cash prize for the winners, which I think is awesome. And I think Cocodona should have a cash prize, but what they should do is they should allow viewers to the live stream to donate to the cash prize so that it's not stated to the runners up front. But like, imagine being, at mile 220 and you're in a race, you're like second or third or something, and your pacer is like, dude, it is up to $12,000. Like, I think that would be awesome. Yeah.
Yeah, you gotta tell that to Jamil. I'm sure that's coming at some point.
That would be so great. I think just like add another layer of, the game here.
Well, we hope to see we hope to see Mandy, I guess, at Cocodona. We will see you at Cocodona. Kilian, you're in. She's not just yet, but she'll get there, I'm sure.
Yeah, we hope for it, for sure.
Yes, that's right. Thanks again for your time this morning. We appreciate it. We won't keep you much any longer. And thanks for tuning in. Follow Kilian. Where can we follow you at, Kilian?
So I'm Run Tough Mindset, just all one word, on Instagram. And then if you want to work with me as a coach, you can find me at theeverydayultra.com. I also have a Substack, which is also Run Tough Mindset, if you want to read my long form thoughts about running.
That sounds great. We'll tune into those channels for sure. And we're rooting for you, Kilian. Thanks for your time this morning.
Thank you. Appreciate you both.
That book.
Yeah, definitely. I will send it your way.
Awesome.